Daekwon Jacorbian Hines, known to his loved ones as Dae Dae, was born on May 7, 2001. He was described as bright, creative, and full of energy. His mother, Monique Gaines, said he loved to build things, and anything he could get his hands on, he'd take it apart and put it back together again. Originally from Augusta, Georgia, Daekwon moved to live with his grandmother in Thompson in 2016. His mother made the decision hoping he'd have a better shot at a peaceful life, away from the violence and distractions of Richmond County. At first, it seemed like the right move. He enrolled in a youth challenge program, landed a job, and kept in close contact with his mom. But by 17, Daekwon's life was starting to drift. His mother noticed changes with his attitude, his appearance, and his resistance to school. Unfortunately, in hindsight, she realized those were serious red flags. He'd started hanging out with the wrong crowd, even ended up at Crossroad Alternative School, and that new circle of so-called friends would ultimately betray him. On Friday, May 11, 2018, Daekwon left his grandmother's Thompson Villas apartment on Cardinal Street, formerly known as the Cherry Tree Apartments. He told her he was going to visit a female friend near Bussey Avenue and Gus Street. That friend later told police she last saw Daekwon at around 6 p.m. That was sadly the last time anyone saw Daekwon alive. His family grew concerned when he failed to return home. His mother's text went unanswered, and his aunt, Tiana Bonner, who was close in age to Daekwon, noticed he stopped responding to her messages and wasn't posting on Facebook. She knew at that point something was very wrong. That same week, just days before Daekwon vanished, a 14-year-old boy was shot in the leg at the Thompson Villas Apartments, the same complex where Daekwon lived. The two were reportedly best friends. A suspect in the shooting was 19-year-old Cortorius Collins, who was arrested shortly after. Investigators later began to suspect that the people involved in that shooting might also be connected to Daekwon's disappearance. 3 days after he went missing, on May 14, 2018, Daekwon's body was found. It was a neighbor, Spencer Moore, who helped lead family members to the wooded area just off Dale Drive, behind a cluster of duplexes about a mile from the McDuffie County Sheriff's Office. What they found was horrifying. Daekwon had been executed. A black plastic bag had been tied over his head, and he had been shot. Spencer recalled hearing gunshots on Saturday night. He also said there was a suspicious white car in his driveway with a young woman behind the wheel. As he confronted her, a young man emerged from the woods, claiming he had left something back there. They quickly left, and he never saw them again. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation identified Daekwon through his tattoo and the clothes he was wearing. An autopsy confirmed what his family already knew. He died from a gunshot wound, and his death was ruled a homicide. He was laid to rest at Westview Cemetery just a week after what should have been his 17th birthday. His mother has continued texting him each morning, even after his death, still hoping for a response that will never come. She now speaks out, warning other parents to look for the signs of peer pressure and behavioral change before it's too late. As of now, the GBI has named no suspects publicly, though they've said they do have people in mind. But for Daekwon's family, especially his mother, justice can't come soon enough. They believe someone in McDuffie County knows exactly what happened to Daekwon, and until someone speaks up, all they can do is hold on to his memory and hope the truth finally comes to light. Daekwon Jacorbian Hines was found murdered on May 14, 2018, and as of June 2025, this case remains unsolved. Diana Lynn Harris was born on October 6, 1953, in Owasso, Michigan. Diana was known for her bright smile, fearless spirit, and unwavering love for her children, Christine and Mikey. But in 1981, at just 27 years old, she was at a crossroads. After losing her job in Michigan, she decided to take a leap, packing up her 2 children and heading to the Florida Keys in search of a better life. They arrived in Big Pine Key that February, and to her 10-year-old daughter, Christine, it felt like a dream come true. Sunny beaches, palm trees, warm breezes. It was paradise. Diana got a job at the No Name pub and later at the Sugarloaf Key Lodge, and in exchange for her labor, they were allowed to stay at a nearby motel. Life seemed simple, even beautiful, but beneath the surface, danger was quietly circling. Soon after arriving, Diana started dating Gary Vincent Argenzio, a local fisherman. At first, he seemed charming, but his past told a different story. He had a criminal record involving kidnapping, false imprisonment, and sexual violence. Gary lived in a house on Tortuga Lane, a place locals called the Party House, and it was known for wild nights, drug activity, and corruption. The house belonged to Mitchell Dinker, a powerful attorney notorious for defending drug traffickers. Some Key West police officers partied there too. Officers would later be fired or indicted when the department was declared a criminal enterprise under the RICO Act. On June 7, 1981, Diana took her children to the Miami airport so they could spend the summer with their father in Michigan. It was the last time Christine and Mikey would ever see their mother. Diana promised to pick them up in August for her sister's wedding, but by mid-July, the phone calls stopped, and when she failed to show up in August, her mother called the police and reported her missing. Her clothes, photographs, and everything she owned had been left behind. It was as though she had vanished into thin air. Not long after Diana disappeared, Gary Argenzio disappeared too. Authorities later discovered that he had stolen a fishing boat and fled to Mexico. He was eventually caught and extradited to Florida, but he was only charged with the boat theft. He served a short sentence, and a decade later, in 1992, he was convicted of impersonating a police officer. He died just 4 days later, without ever being charged in connection to Diana's disappearance. After his death, the whispers grew louder. 2 men, Mitchell Dinker and Mark Rippon, came forward claiming that Gary had confessed to murdering Diana during an argument, smashing her head into a wall at the Tortuga Lane house. One of them even described a hole in the wall smeared with blood, but both men had been close to the situation for years, and neither had come forward while Gary was alive. Christine, just 10 years old at the time her mother vanished, grew up haunted by questions. She returned to Florida at 16, determined to find answers. In 1995, she successfully pushed to have the case reopened. That same year, another disappearance rocked the Keys. 41-year-old Thomas Stephen Stump went missing on July 25th. Tom had been preparing for a family vacation with his wife Bernie and their daughters. That morning, he got gas, visited the post office, and made plans with family. But by late afternoon, one of his daughters called her grandmother, saying they believed their father had taken his own life in the woods. That evening, Bernie called the rental car agency requesting new keys, claiming Tom had drowned himself. However, no body was ever found. Tom was simply gone. Here's where the stories intersect. Back in 1981, Bernie had lived with Diana and Gary at the Tortuga Lane house. Her ex-husband was Mark Rippon, the same man who claimed Gary confessed to Diana's murder. After Tom vanished, Bernie moved on quickly, marrying Bill Becker, a prominent local radio host she was rumored to be involved with prior to Tom's disappearance. Christine couldn't ignore the parallels. She began uncovering disturbing connections between Diana, Tom, and others who had vanished in suspicious ways, such as Beverly Elaine Darnell and Gerald Douglas Oxby, who had barely been mentioned in the public narrative. In early August 1981, just weeks after Diana disappeared, Gerald Oxby also vanished. He was a sailor who had spent over a year restoring a 57-foot boat called the Antares. He was last seen in Key West, where the boat had been docked. His girlfriend, Kim Goodwin, later called Oxby's mother in Wales, saying she was worried. She mentioned a man Oxby knew, someone who had threatened her with a gun. That man was reportedly the last person to see Gerald alive. Kim tried to file a missing person report, but the Key West police allegedly refused to investigate. Desperate, she hired a private detective. That agency concluded Oxby had likely been the victim of foul play. They too received threats, allegedly from the same man who had last been seen with Oxby. Because no official report was ever filed, Gerald Oxby remains unlisted among Florida's missing. His boat vanished with him, and no trace has ever been found. The similarities to Diana's case are chilling. A disappearance tied to a known criminal element, a law enforcement system that looked the other way, and a family left with nothing but questions. Christine has spent decades pulling at threads, gathering documents, confronting witnesses, and even proving that Gary Argenzio didn't flee Florida immediately after Diana vanished, as authorities once claimed. She's been told everything from theories of trafficking to cover-ups tied to drug operations. She doesn't believe the rumors that her mother was seen alive years later. She knows in her heart that Diana died in 1981. What she wants, what she needs, is the truth. Today, more than 4 decades later, Diana Harris, Gerald Oxby, and Thomas Stump remain missing. Their stories are tangled in secrets, silenced by fear, and buried beneath years of corruption and complicity. Diana Lynn Harris disappeared in 1981, and as of June 2025, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Jason MacCullough was born on September 7, 1980, in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. He was described as a kind-hearted, community-focused teenager known for his gentle spirit and generosity. Jason was the kind of young man who would shovel snow for elderly neighbors, carry their groceries, and mow their lawns without being asked. He volunteered with the Boys and Girls Club at the Dartmouth North site and had achieved the rank of Chief Scout with Scouts Canada. His friends at the club called him Piglet, a nickname that stuck and one his family still lovingly uses today. Jason had just graduated from Dartmouth High School in 1998 and had been accepted to both St. Mary's and Dalhousie University. He dreamed of continuing his education and even considered joining the Navy to help pay for it. He was passionate about music, especially R&B, and had a bright future ahead of him. But just a few weeks after turning 19, Jason's life was stolen. In the early hours of Saturday, August 28, 1999, he was found shot in the back of the head on a paved path between 100 and 104 Pinecrest Drive in the Highfield Park area of Dartmouth. It was around 2:30 a.m., and investigators believe Jason had simply been walking home, cutting through a well-known shortcut between the buildings. There was no indication he had been involved in any criminal activity, making some believe his murder was a random act of violence. From the very beginning, police have believed that there were several people in the area who witnessed Jason's murder, but no one has ever come forward. Sadly, this silence has haunted the family for decades. Detective Tom Martin led the investigation into Jason's case from the very first night until his retirement in 2008. Working closely with the RCMP, Martin and the team interviewed at least 250 people in connection with the case. In the early stages of the investigation, 5 composite sketches were released of men seen in the area. These men were considered persons of interest. Then in 2000, the now defunct Daily News made a bold move when they published the names of 4 alleged suspects. It was later revealed that just hours before Jason's murder, 3 of those men had broken into an acquaintance's home on Pinecrest Drive, not far from where Jason's body would later be found. They demanded money, brandished a gun, and stole several $100s. All 3 lived in the area and pleaded guilty to those charges. Despite this, none were ever charged in connection with Jason's death. In 2005, police announced that new information had surfaced and launched a search for a woman believed to have been at Highfield Park on the night Jason was murdered. No details were ever released about her identity, and it remains unknown whether she was ever located or questioned. In a 2014 interview, Martin said police came very close to charging someone. It's unclear what stopped them or who the suspect was. Jason's cousin, Vanessa, and her family eventually moved out of the area. After Jason died, that place got a little run down. People moved out of there, she said. The neighborhood changed. The city eventually placed a family co-op there, and it's mostly children now. It took years for the area to be cleaned up. Buildings were repaired. The park where Jason died was renamed in his honor. Today, it's known as Jason MacCullough Memorial Park. When the sign was first installed, someone vandalized it, but the city replaced it immediately. Jason's murder changed the way Clark's family lived. She was no longer allowed out after dark. Her younger brother, who was too young to remember Jason, was kept close to home. Every year, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Halifax hosts the annual Walk Against Violence in Jason's memory. Hundreds walk from Farrell Street to Jason's Park, holding moments of silence and signs of hope. In 2018, over 200 people participated. That year, Jason's mother, Carolyn, said, "For one evening, we are not alone." Jason MacCullough was murdered on August 28, 1999, and as of June 2025, this case remains unsolved. Susan Mary Jacobson was born on December 8, 1953. At age 59, she lived a quiet life with her husband of more than 3 decades, Chris Jacobson, in the peaceful Sun City community of Roseville, California. She was a petite lady, standing just 4 foot 11 inches and weighing only about 90 pounds. Susan didn't socialize much and rarely left the house without telling someone. But on the morning of May 1st, 2013, something changed. Chris told investigators that Susan left their home early that Wednesday morning to run errands. Her first stop, he claimed, was the nearby Rayleigh's grocery store, which was only a short drive from their home. But strangely, no one ever saw her inside the store. Later that day, her dark blue Honda Civic was discovered parked in the Rayleigh's parking lot, located at the corner of Pleasant Grove Boulevard and Wood Creek Oaks Boulevard. The car was unlocked and parked far from the store entrance, in an area not covered by surveillance cameras. Her purse was inside, but the keys were missing. A jogger later found her wallet on a sidewalk near Mahoney Park, but the cash and credit cards inside were missing. Despite the grocery store being located in a bustling area near a high school, Starbucks, a bank, and several other businesses, no one reported seeing anything suspicious. In the days that followed, police, search dogs, volunteers, and family members conducted extensive searches, but no trace of Susan was ever found. With no confirmed sightings of her that day, many wondered if she had really gone to the grocery store or had something happened before she even left their neighborhood. From the start, many locals felt something didn't add up. The way her car was parked, the discarded wallet, and the complete lack of surveillance footage suggested the scene had been staged. Some theorized that someone else parked her car there deliberately, left the wallet nearby to support a story, and walked away. The missing keys may have been taken to prevent anyone from moving the car too soon. Nothing about the situation felt random. Adding to the unease was the fact that Susan was about to become a grandmother for the first time, something she had reportedly been excited about. Friends and neighbors insisted she would never have missed such an important milestone. Chris maintained from the beginning that his wife did not leave by choice. He acknowledged that he was closely examined by investigators, as is common in these situations. When the case was reopened in 2021, investigators attempted to speak with him again, but Chris said his attorney had retired and refused to talk until he found a new one. It's unclear whether he ever followed through. In 2024, Chris sold their home and moved to Tennessee. Neighbors in Sun City said he had been seen traveling with a female neighbor and even took a trip to Hawaii before relocating. Some believe police had him under surveillance at one point and possibly even searched his backyard. Chris had worked at R.C. Willey during the time of Susan's disappearance, and one former coworker claimed he showed up to work the next day looking unusually tired and borrowed bolt cutters from the warehouse later that week. None of these details are conclusive, but they've kept suspicions alive. There were also unconfirmed rumors that Susan struggled with alcohol and used her treadmill obsessively to stay small and fit, possibly as a way to cope with long-term pain related to a birth injury. But even if she had personal challenges, those close to her say she wouldn't have just walked away, especially not when her first grandchild was on the way. In 2021, Detective Dave Harlan with the Roseville Police Department was assigned to the case, and began re-examining all available evidence. With advancements in forensic technology, including 4K video resolution and more sensitive DNA analysis, investigators hope to uncover something new, but it's unclear if they have. Susan's neighbors still remember her fondly as a kind, quiet woman who took meticulous care of her garden, always out there with a broom or rake, keeping everything just right, one neighbor recalled. Another family friend, Bill Hunter, said he never believed Chris had anything to do with Susan's disappearance. However, others in the community remain skeptical. Susan Jacobson went missing on May 1, 2013, and now, 12 years later, there's still no sign of her, and her case remains unsolved. In the quiet river towns of Lewiston, Idaho, and Assenton, Washington, the Snake River winds gently between them, carving through the Lewis-Clark Valley like a lifeline. But between 1979 and 1982, something sinister took hold of this peaceful area. 5 young people vanished or were found brutally murdered, and for decades, those losses were treated as separate tragedies. But the deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became. There were patterns, overlapping timelines, familiar faces, and one man whose name kept coming up, Lance Jeffrey Voss. The nightmare began on April 28, 1979, in Assenton, Washington. 12-year-old Christina White had been enjoying the county fair when she began feeling sick. Around 2:30 p.m., she called her mom from her friend Rose's house to say she didn't feel well. Without a car, her mother told her to lie down with a cool towel and come home when she felt better. Sadly, Christina never made it. She was last seen near the 500 block of 2nd Street, riding her white 10-speed bicycle. Neither she nor her bike were ever found. Weeks later, some of her schoolwork turned up scattered in a field outside town. What no one knew then was that Christina had stopped at the home of Patricia Brennan, the future wife of Lance Voss. Voss later admitted to seeing her that day. He said he gave her a washcloth for her head, and when the search began, he was right there offering to help, suggesting search areas that investigators would later suspect were meant to throw them off. The whole thing struck those involved as strange. Just over 2 years later, on June 26, 1981, 21-year-old Kristen David disappeared while riding her bike from Moscow, Idaho, to her summer job in Lewiston. Witnesses remembered seeing her talking with a man in a brown van who had approached other female cyclists that day. 8 days later, her dismembered torso was found in the Snake River. Her limbs and head were discovered over the next few days, wrapped in black plastic and newspaper from that past April. As for her bike and belongings, they were never recovered. Kristen had worked at the Lewiston Civic Theater, and so had Voss. Then came September 12, 1982. That evening, 21-year-old Christina Nelson and her 18-year-old stepsister, Jacqueline Brandy Miller, left Christina's apartment on 4th Street to walk to the Safeway. Christina left a note for her boyfriend, letting him know they'd be right back. Their walk would have taken them past the Civic Center. They never arrived back at Christina's apartment and were never seen alive again. That same night, 35-year-old Stephen Pearsall was dropped off at the theater by his girlfriend at around 12:14 a.m. He worked there as a janitor and planned to do laundry and practice his clarinet. A patrol officer saw him enter through a side door. His clarinet was later found inside. His car, uncashed paycheck, and personal belongings were untouched. Stephen was never seen again. And Voss, he just happened to be there as well that night. He told police he had worked with Stephen earlier that day, building a ship prop. He said Stephen left to go to a party and that he himself had gone to get pizza. Voss claimed he returned to the theater around 10 p.m., laid down on a couch in the green room, and slept there until 4 a.m. 2 years later, in March 1984, 14-year-old Marvin Mead was collecting cans near Kendrick, Idaho, when he stumbled upon human remains. They were identified as Christina Nelson and Brandy Miller. Rope found with the bodies matched stage prop rope from the theater. It appeared the bodies had been dumped and later moved down a steep embankment. At first, some suspected Stephen Pearsall, but police began to believe he had simply walked into something he wasn't supposed to see, a witness who was most likely silenced. Stephen's disappearance devastated his family. His sister, Rhonda, described him as a gentle soul who loved to draw cartoons and make people laugh. His father searched every day, checking ravines and talking to strangers. Stephen had attended a retirement party the night he vanished. Police searched his apartment, but found nothing out of place. Eventually, police used luminol to test for blood inside the Civic Theater, but the lead-based paint rendered the results inconclusive. Still, suspicion grew. In 1995, police publicly stated their belief that Christina, Brandy, and Stephen had all been killed at the theater. In 1998, they officially linked Kristen David's case to the same suspect. And since the early 90s, they had privately suspected Christina White's case was connected too. In 2011, the documentary Confluence named Lance Jeffrey Voss as their prime suspect. The 2018 series Cold Valley reinforced that conclusion without naming him directly. Journalists and investigators who spent years on the case also believe Voss is responsible for all 5 victims, and the red flags don't stop there. Back in 1972, Voss was arrested for attempting to break into a mortuary in San Jose, California. Inside the building were the bodies of 2 recently deceased teenage girls, including a 17-year-old named Antoinette who had drowned. Voss was found outside with a flashlight, knife, and camera. He later pled guilty to trespassing. Why he was there, no one knows, and he never said. Over the years, he kept inserting himself into these tragedies. He joined community searches. He walked into police stations to ask about the investigations. He pointed searchers toward misleading areas. One officer recalled how Voss approached him on the street, casually asking about the serial killer case like it was small talk, and multiple people remembered him showing up to search parties with a towel wrapped around his neck, just like the one he gave Christina White. Voss lived on the same street as Christina Nelson and attended Lewis Clark State College like she did. He worked with Kristen David and was present the night of the Civic Theater disappearances, and yet he has never been charged. He refused polygraph test and retained an attorney. Voice stress analysis indicated deception, but without definitive physical evidence and even Stephen Purcell's body still missing, prosecutors feared they couldn't win a conviction. Today, Lance Voss reportedly lives in North Carolina. In 2012, 16-year-old Kayla Campbell went missing while riding her bike in Mint Hill, the same town where Voss was living. Her body was found days later in a nearby pond. Her death was ruled accidental, but for the families of both Christinas, Kristen, Brandy, and Stephen, it's hard to believe in coincidences anymore. The science to solve this case exists. Forensic genealogy has solved colder cases with far less. To this day, families still light candles, they post flyers, they ask questions, and the man believed to be responsible for 5 deaths between 1979 and 1982, he's still walking free.